We're going to have a slightly compressed afternoon. We're going to have only 3 talks right now, from now until 3 o'clock. And then we have a half-hour break, 3 to 3:30, and then we're going to have the panel 3:30 to 4:30. So let's start with the first talk. And we're very happy to have Ben. I'm not going to try to pronounce your last name. And we're going to talk about cryptography for #MeToo.
Great, thank you. So before I start, this is joint work with Hugo Kravchik and Tal Rabin, which I completed during my internship at IBM Research. So while the last few talks have focused on very general multi-party computations, for our work we have a very specific application in mind. In particular, we want to do secure reporting of serial perpetrators of sexual assault. So why is this an interesting problem? Just kind of some high-level motivation. Statistics show that most sexual assault is perpetrated by repeat offenders. So yeah, this is horrible, but this actually gives us an advantage in trying to deal with this sort of issues. Because you're going to have a multitude of victims, they can come together and corroborate evidence, and this gives us a better chance of making sure that the perpetrators face legal consequences. Of course, in order to accomplish this matching of victims, we need some sort of system, some way for them to come together and see who is victims of the same perpetrator. And ideally, they could maintain some privacy while doing so. Just step back for a minute, imagine what they could do if we had a trusted third party. Everyone could submit their accusations to the third party. The third party could sort them by the name of the accused perpetrator, and then simply when there are enough accusations against the same perpetrator, they could initiate some sort of legal action. I'm not a lawyer, we're going to be pretty vague about what that legal action is. We're just going to think of it as some confirmation protocol, where a legal counselor can take the names of the accused, contact them, collect evidence, take the name of the accusers, and maybe take action on that. So let's look at some of the prior work motivating that. This is not a cryptographic work, but you might remember a few years back there was this article about a group creating an anonymously edited Google document to track perpetrators of sexual assault. So how would this work? Victims would go to this website, go to Google Docs, they would log out of their Google accounts so that their edits were anonymous, very secure, and they would put the name of the perpetrator in a row. They would also put their affiliation and alleged misconduct, and the way it would detect repeat offenders is periodically someone would comb through the list, and if the same name appeared a couple times, they would highlight it in red. So, of course, this has no correctness or security guarantees, but it's kind of an important motivation that people are interested in this functionality in real life. So if we could provide a system that efficiently and securely implemented it, it could be really useful. So one group has already started on this. This is the Project Callisto, and I think they have some sort of implementation even. And this work was a very good motivation in which it gave the functionality that we're interested in. It also did a very good job of protecting the anonymity of the accusers. However, it focused much less on the names of the accused. We want a system that can protect both the accuser and the accused until the confirmation protocol begins. So what's an attack on their system? Well, they use OPRFs to kind of encode the names of the accused. I'm not going to even tell you what that acronym stands for because it's not important here, but what you do need to know is that they're deterministic. So this deterministic encoding is, of course, it's useful because it means we can compare 2 encodings in order to do a matching, but it also provides an attack surface. If you're interested in seeing if a person D was accused and you can corrupt one of their servers, it's trivial to get the encoded version and check if it's in the database. So we need to keep this in mind and and we want to design a system that can protect the names of the accused. So what is the functionality we want? Well, at the start, we're going to input a list of valid users. We're not going to specify who a valid user is. We're going to get this externally. And then we're going to receive accusations from a user U against D. If U is a valid accuser, we're going to add this user U to the list of accusers against D. And once we reach this quorum Q, which we can just think of as a number like 3 or 5, we're going to initiate this confirmation protocol, which is, again, external to the system. and which gets the names of the accuser and the accused. So before we implement this, we should talk about one kind of attack that remains in the ideal world. And this is an important attack from an applied standpoint. Imagine a person D expects to be accused, and they want to detect whether or not someone has accused them. Well, they simply get the quorum -1, that is 4 of their friends, to make false accusations against him. Then, if one real accusation comes in, the confirmation protocol will be initiated. So, the real accuser, as well as the false ones, will be alerted. And if his friends can report back to him, he can flee the country before the legal process starts, or whatever else he wants to do to avoid detection. So there's no cryptographic resolution to this, because there's absolutely no way to tell if an accusation is real or false. However, we can hope to attach consequences for making false accusations. This is, again, external to the system, but one could hope that the confirmation protocol can investigate these fraudulent accusations. However, this means that our protocol needs to accurately report the names of the accusers. And this is an important part of our functionality. Okay, so now I'm going to describe briefly the Hutu protocol that we propose as a solution, and I'm going to describe it as a kind of a series of layers from the inside out. First, we're going to have our private quorum testing, which is really the heart of this protocol. We want to take a multiset, and we want to efficiently see if an element occurs more than, or the quorum number of times in it. On top of that, we need a way, as we discussed, to tie the names of the accuser to their accusation. After that, we need to throw in a couple proofs of knowledge to prevent people from kind of naively copying other people's accusations. And then finally, we're going to discuss the kind of standard tools to remove the need for central trust. We're going to distribute this over multiple servers. Yeah?
So no matter what, you're going to need a PKI here, right?
Yes.
So you're still going to need central trust first.
Yeah, so you need someone to set up the PKI. Yeah. Yeah. But the idea is that we can kind of separate this trust, that trusting someone to give you a list of valid users or set up a PKI is very different than like giving them a list of who's accused people of sexual assault. Sure. Okay, and then before we describe it, just kind of some nice properties that we want in addition to just security and correctness. We want it to be non-interactive for users. Just we imagine people on very weak devices who want to submit accusations. But at the same time, it should be efficient enough for servers. So we're going to look at protocols that are very specific for this problem and see what we can do to speed up the computation of our private quorum detection. And finally, we want kind of a fairly simple presentation. We try to avoid using any crazy cryptographic primitives and succeed for the most part. So first, this private quorum testing that I promised you. This is just kind of an outline of it. We'll go to the implementation at the end if I have a couple minutes. So again, the problem is to figure out if D occurs 5 times in a multiset S. So we also want some sort of privacy. So the server and user should learn nothing about the whole set. Again, this is the set of people who have been accused. And the server should learn nothing about the element that it's adding to the set. And in addition, we're going to stipulate that it's non-interactive. That is, we have a single message M sub D from the user, which the servers can use to add D to the multiset. Okay, and just at the bottom, I'm going to keep track of all we need in an accusation. On top of this, we need to tie accuser identities to accusations. The problem is to determine if an accusation came from a valid user, and the privacy guarantee is that the server does not learn which user. So there's kind of a standard tool for this called group signatures, and in particular, we're going to use the BBS short group signatures from 2004. And this result, they end up working in an elliptic curve group with pairings, but I guess that's okay. But it's a very efficient and easy to compute and easy to verify group signature. Just to get into a little more detail, the group signature provides 3 protocols. You have signing, and it's very similar in interface to a standard public key signature, that each user is going to have a private key, and they can sign with their private key. And verification, too, is done with a single global public key, but the important part of verification is that it does not reveal which user, signed it. But in addition to these, we have a tracing protocol, and this tracing protocol can recover which user signed the message. So it's this separation of verification and tracing that makes this well suited to our protocol. Right, and on top of that, we need a proof of knowledge. I guess the problem is just someone copying this MD from a prior accusation, that you should only be able to accuse people that you know the names of. And this is just to agree, this is fairly clear, I think. Great, and then finally on top of this, the problem with group signatures in, I guess, this setting is that they assume a single trusted server. So this is both for key distribution and for tracing. If we had a single server doing these, there's no guarantee that if they were corrupted, they would not trace prematurely or distribute keys to the wrong people. So we use some fairly standard tools from threshold cryptography in order to obtain a thresholdized version of group signatures. This is another reason why we're going to use the BBS scheme. It's doing these kind of group exponentiations that you need to achieve their protocol is very well suited to some kind of standard threshold cryptography tools. So I'm not going to go through the implementation of that because it's very similar to a lot of threshold signature schemes that are already out there. But I think this is the first time we've seen a fully thresholdized group signature scheme, and I think it's an important primitive. Great, so that is the whole of our accusation. And after you have an accusation, it's pretty clear how the rest of the protocol follows. What I am going to go into detail on is how we implement these private quorum finding. And the base of this is some pretty standard tools of representing a set as a polynomial. So this just converts the kind of ugly set operations into things that are really nice that we can do with arithmetic circuits. So this is originally like Kissinger's Song 05, and the idea has been floating around for a while, but the idea is you encode a multiset S by the roots of a polynomial. So each element of S has each element of S will be a root of the polynomial. And then what operations do we need? Well, we need to know how to add things to the multiset. That's easy. We just multiply by x minus s, and that increases the multiplicity of s by 1. We also need our quorum check. And here it's kind of interesting. We're going to use differentiation to figure out the degree of a root. So if we want to test if the degree is greater than or equal to 5, we're just going to take the fourth derivative and evaluate it at s. Now, an interesting thing about this test is that although it's perfectly complete, it's not sound. And in fact, this is kind of a problem because if an adversary could figure out a place where a fake root was, it could trigger the confirmation process prematurely. What we end up showing is that it suffices to randomize f by multiplying by some r of degree 5. So the way it's going to work is you're going to choose a random polynomial of degree 5, r, you're going to take r times f, and then you're going to check if the fourth derivative is 0 at the appropriate spot. So that's how that part works, but just encoding in polynomials doesn't do us anything yet. We're going to end up encoding the coefficients of the polynomial, and we're going to stick them in the exponent of some group. We're going to choose encryption to be multiplicatively homomorphic, and then you get some polynomial operations for free. Basically, any linear operator on polynomials is going to be easy. So you can differentiate and you can subtract polynomials. However, for evaluation and for multiplication by some unknown value, it gets a little harder. We end up using just some basic secret sharing technology. It gives you a kind of a cheap one-time multiplication. And that's how we're going to end up multiplying both the multiplying by x minus s and the evaluation. And that's actually all I have for you, so I guess I have a lot of time for questions if people have stuff.
How do you ensure that the roots of R don't coincide with any actual S's that are deterministically produced from the names?
Yeah, so what we do is we randomize. I didn't write it here, but it's actually kind of cute. You choose a polynomial of degree 5, and then you take the fourth derivative of r times f. So we managed to prove that the roots of that are either completely random if the multiplicity is less than 5. So because you're only testing at a particular fixed spot, it's okay if they coincide with real people's names. You just need that when you pick the random polynomial after you choose S, that the probability is 1 over the size of the field, or 5 over the size of the field. Yeah.
So this ideal functionality seems troubling still from both parties' perspective.
Yeah.
right, I can add accusations to people. I can check if people have accused me by adding myself.
Yeah, so one thing is that I kind of glossed over this, but it is a set union in the ideal functionality. So each person can only be counted once.
Right, but there's no consequence to accusing as many people as I want.
There is not inside of the protocol.
So, I guess, is there any hope to have anything like harder to like, is this the right ideal functionality, or is this just what we know how to do right now?
So I think it's the right ideal functionality. You could add rate limiting, right? In fact, you could do something where each person can only send a single accusation. Yeah. Is that still troubling? Yeah.
Sexually harassed by more than one person.
Yeah. But you could have a small constant number total. But the problem is, even with rate limiting, this attack is really going to exist. But I think it's fundamental because you really can't tell a real versus a false accusation. So it all kind of comes down to this confirmation process and the investigative process of whatever court. Yeah.
Following up on the rate limiting of accusers, right now it doesn't seem like there's anything in the ideal functionality in the sense that you only learn the identity of the accusers after the fact. So you would need to add sort of a notion of that.
So that does follow from the ideal functionality, just because you shouldn't. The only time it outputs is when it runs this confirmed process. So if we don't learn anything other than the output, we shouldn't see the names of the accusers or accused before we reach a quorum. Yeah, so that's the security we're after. No, so if the accusation itself doesn't reveal anything about who the accuser was. Obviously, there's like network analysis, but you could imagine some sort of anonymous channel or mixed net on top of this. But just from the accusation, no, you shouldn't learn who the accuser was. No, we're working on some implementation stuff, but yeah, not yet. Right. Well, thank you. No? All right.